everybody. Welcome back to Subconscious Sundays. I am your co-host, Rev April Kling, and with me as always is my fantastic bestie and excellent co-host, Timothy Freeman. Hi, Tim.
Hello. Welcome, everybody.
Hello, everybody. So today was not on the plan to be today. Today's topic was supposed to happen several weeks ago, but we both had, I would say, divine intervention come into play and say, no, you're not ready to talk about this yet. Tribalism, the dark side of belonging. We had a cataclysmic weather event in Tim's case, which you got out of unscathed, I trust.
Not cataclysmic. We got grazed by a hurricane and had a power outage.
Yeah.
Could have been worse.
It could have been worse. And I got COVID, so could have been worse.
Yeah.
But honestly, Tim and I were just saying offline before the show about how I was saying, speaking truly for myself, and Tim agreed to some extent, I guess. I wouldn't have been able to talk about this to the extent that I could until today, even though nothing's truly happened in this regard. Like, I don't have new things to talk about when it comes to tribalism. I don't have new things to talk about when it comes to groupthink. It's just that I've had more time to reflect on it, and some revelations have happened upon further reflection. I would say that COVID has a nasty, beautiful habit of making one very introspective. It can. I know that that's been the case for several people that have had COVID, where it's kind of turned inward on you a little bit. Like, it's kind of an infection of the spirit, so to speak. And I think I've even talked about this on the show at some point. I have this vague deja vu thing as I'm saying it out loud.
I haven't ever heard you say that, but there's definitely, I don't know, I got it too recently for the first time. And if you guys out there are getting it or have had it recently, this one's kind of like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of mine have been like that. Every strain that I've managed to get inflicted with. But before we go too much further down that path, let's set some intentions, as we do every episode. So Subconscious Sundays is intended to be a fun and entertaining, laid-back way to discuss potentially serious and heavy topics. This week's is no exception.
Yep, and we remain open and inviting. Welcome anybody who have questions or ideas to respectfully bring them to the conversation. We'd love to hear from you guys.
We really do. And it's our weekly ritual to gather in a shared community in this virtual sacred space to share our knowledge while hearing your response, so that together we may generate wisdom. I just added that off the cuff.
Yep, exactly. And core values for us here: respectful of everybody's individual journey, rooted in compassion for self and others. We're here to promote growth and expansion and create a supportive community. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here. All right, let's talk about tribalism a little bit. We do have some commentary here. Oh my goodness, look who's here. Hello, Gloria. Thank you for being with us today. Greetings to you as well. So glad you could make it. Gloria and Jill, another regular viewer, picked today's topic, which is the first time we've ever done that. So considering that two people who live on opposite sides of the Atlantic Ocean and two people who don't know each other picked today's topic, I figured that, they picked topics that were so adjacent that it fit under this umbrella of tribalism and the dark side of belonging and that sort of thing. What Gloria suggested was talking about religious abuse. And what Jill suggested was talking about groupthink and brainwashing, I believe it was. And I kind of felt like we could talk about all of that under one umbrella, which is tribalism. Now, as many of you know, I am currently studying international peace studies and conflict resolution at Trinity in Dublin. And I have a relevant source to give. And that was something when Tim and I decided to embark on a second season of the show, to bring more of what we're reading and bring more of what we're learning from viable hard sources into this environment instead of just being like, oh, we're these arbiters of wisdom. We wanted to have like something to refer back to, and also like sort of like something to encourage you into further reading. So I will say that this is something that I've been given a lot of thought over the years. This is something that I like am attracted to learning more about through many, many sources, but I'm most informed recently by the works of Daniel Shapiro, specifically negotiating the non-negotiable, how to resolve your most emotionally charged conflict. And you're probably wondering, like, what does it mean to have like conflict resolution or negotiation involved with tribalism? Turns out it's a lot. And I will say that bringing this book into the fray, there's 2 chapters that are relevant to what we're going to talk about today. And that is the chapter on vertigo and the chapter on tribalism or tribes. And I know that that's a term that is a little bit bandied about a little too freely. And when I say tribes, I'm not referring to indigeneity, and I don't mean any disrespect to indigeneity. What I am referring to when I say tribalism is our tendency to form groups that think similarly and that offer like a mirror image to one another. This has everything to do with identity. So when I have multiple people asking us to talk about this idea of groupthink or this idea of religiosity, this idea of people coming together and forming this mob or collective mentality, we're essentially talking about 2 things happening at the same time. Vertigo, according to Daniel Shapiro, is this idea that our thoughts have kind of a life of their own, separate from our consciousness at times. If we are not maintaining consciousness, that our thoughts can have this ability to spiral around, to form a hurricane, and cause a lot of damage, potentially.
I think that's really interesting. Sorry to interrupt, April, but I just learned something about hurricanes that I didn't know, and I just think this is kind of apt for your metaphor here.
Yeah.
That basically, like, it's a low pressure area. I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not gonna get it exactly right, I'm sure, but it's just the physics of it. It's just the low pressure and the air moving from higher pressure to lower pressure, and it tends to go counterclockwise. That's all it is, just amplified. So it's like this thought creates a little, like, fills a little vacuum, and then everybody else's fills in, and here we go.
High pressure. That feeds what I'm saying today. And then the other thing that's happening is this idea of identity that is derived from our relationship to others. So again, before I go into that, I'm getting ahead of myself a lot today. Got to rein myself in. As I was telling Tim, I had a little bit too much coffee too late in the day. So if I'm bouncing off the walls a little extra today, that's why. But it's also our season finale, so why not? Now, this week's question: how can you tell that your thoughts are your own?
I love this.
Good. See, this is always a bit of a surprise to Tim. He doesn't hear the questions ahead of time. These are things that are just completely isolated away from him. He can't see them on my Facebook. He's blinded from it. And then I tell him essentially like what I'm going to talk about. Like I give him my notes on what I'm going to talk about, but the question and the responses are always a fun little surprise. This fun little gifties that I get to give Tim every week from all of you. All right. So Erica says, my first thought upon reading this prompt was, ooh, I'm going to like read it phonetically here. Ooh, shit. What a thorny one you've got there. Yes. The commentary this week, or I should say this month, was really, I would say it was juicy. It wasn't juicy. It was spicy. It was spicy commentary. So this is one of the first times where we've got more questions than answers. So here we go. As opposed to what? How can you tell your thoughts are your own? As opposed to what? And my response to Emma was like, as opposed to other people's thoughts. Like, how can you tell your thoughts are your own as opposed to belonging to other people? And I don't mean that to be like, oh, come on, Emma. No. That's an excellent question, Emma. As opposed to what? Because it's like, we need to be asking ourselves that.
Well, it's like,
we need to be asking what Emma's asking.
Here's a kind of intense and crazy question. I'm going to throw one right back at you, okay? As opposed to what?
As opposed to what? Exactly, Emma. As opposed to what? That's the answer, really. But I'll dive into that one further. Basically, my whole speech today is based on what Emma's getting at here. Because I need to just say here that Emma is a woman of wisdom. She is not ignorant to the ways of wisdom. She is very, 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 very learned and wise. Okay, Sarah, my own precious spiritual teacher. Are they ever our own? Again, essentially saying the same thing. Emma, they have similar lineages, by the way, spiritually speaking, Sarah and Emma. That's all I'll say about that. Are they ever our own? She's asking the same question Emma's asking, but I wanted to point out that those two women are deeply wise spiritual teachers. So these are the questions we need to be asking ourselves. Okay. And it's a question in the form of a sentence. Define thoughts, define self. I promised Aaron that I would. For the sake of context, I'm defining thoughts as those, the ideas that come to us through conscious thought. Define thought. I use the word thought. The ideas that come to us in our consciousness as we live through our daily lives. The questions that we ask ourselves. And more specifically in this environment, Aaron, I'm speaking about our dogmas, our ideas of what we believe to be right and wrong, and our ideas of what we believe to be righteous, our ideas of what we believe to be true. Okay? So that's what I mean by thoughts today. Thanks for asking. Define self. Whew, that's a whole other episode that we've already done, actually. But for the sake of bringing it in, to define self here, I'm not talking about the divine inner self. I'm talking about the egoic surface physical self, like the self that is not conscious of self. The self that goes about gluing different things to oneself to form identity. Really, I'm talking about the ego when I'm saying self. And I'm sorry that I actually didn't use the word self. Somebody else did. It was Jack, actually, which is why Aaron asked that question. I was like, why is Aaron asking me that? I didn't use the word self in my question, but it was because Jack right above this said, there is no self. I'm just 3 maladaptive coping mechanisms in a trench coat, which I mean, are not we all, Jack? Are not we all? All right, then. Ryan's response to this was, I paid for them. They're mine now. That's how he knows his thoughts are his own. There's a wisdom to that, Ryan. There really is. In mirth and jokes, there is a wisdom. Now, Roberto and Jill, who's next, my own is a figment of my own imagination. Yeah. Jill goes even further to say essentially the same thing. All of our thoughts are an amalgamation of stimuli. Jill is learned in psychology. If you or someone else feeds your brain crap, you'll think about crap. She's right, you know. So that is, okay, so Bear agrees with Jack. 3 maladaptive. What was it? Maladaptive what again? Maladaptive
coping strategies.
Coping strategies.
Bear
agrees.
It reminds me of like the kids who pile up in the trench coat to become the villain on the cartoon.
Right, exactly. Or even the stack of animals that look in the window at the farmer or whatever.
Right.
I don't remember what that fable was about, but I just have that image in my mind forever. So yeah, how can we tell our thoughts are our own? I'm with pretty much the consensus here that we really should be just asking ourselves that question. And there may not be a really good answer for it at any given time. We probably think we have an answer for that. And it seems very cut and dried, but it, like most things involving wisdom or introspection, there's not really an easy answer to that question. And it seems, even if there seems that there is an easy answer to that question, or is this thought my own? It's probably not ever going to be a clear answer on that.
The greatest minds in philosophy have tried to tackle this for millennia.
Right. And, there's the whole Kantian, I think, therefore I am. Okay, so let's dive into this a little bit here. The issue is tribalism. The reason I'm asking that question is because if we're not asking ourselves such questions as Emma's, as opposed to what, and Sarah's, are they ever our own, or Aaron's, defined thoughts, defined self, we will be subject to the cravings of the ego to form identity from external sources. Now, Bear, who happens to be watching at this moment, put on a 3-day yoga workshop that terminated just this afternoon that I was a participant in which this was a very hot topic, which is why I feel like fate intervened with hurricanes and pandemic levels of disease to make sure that this was given today and not before this workshop that we gave. So I wanted to mention this because Lawrence, Bear's teacher, helped me kind of formulate some things I wanted to say today that I wouldn't have had if we had done this episode when it was scheduled. So giving credit where credit's due. But if we are subject to the ego's cravings to bring identity, who we believe ourselves to be from external sources, we are going to be subject to the ideas of reality, right and wrong, righteousness, what is good, what is evil, from literally anyone and everyone else, besides that deep core inner self that inherently knows from the moment that we come into existence. And there is, and we could get into a whole conversation about innocence and what that really truly is and how that is paradoxical to wisdom, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. I could kind of glance upon that when I talk about the experience of being in a group in which you belong. Now, I want to also say that there's like kind of this conventional idea of belonging that Brené Brown has brought into this conversation of like belonging is when your true self fits, you know, when your true self shows up in a group of people, and like fitting in is when you're like putting on a mask in order to match whoever is around you. When I'm talking about the dark side of belonging, I just want to get away from Brené Brown's like the way she's delineating it. I'm really talking about, to put it into Brené Brown's term, I am talking about the difference between fitting in and belonging. But I'm calling fitting in the dark side of belonging, if that's helpful. If we're looking for our identity, if we're looking to the answers to the question of what am I, who am I, what is existence about, from external sources, we are subject to this idea that our community feeds us this. And there's a way that community feeds us this that is subject to questioning, doubt, introspection, and continual examination that reveals truth. And then there is a way of deriving this from the community that is, and on that prior one, it's really just allowing your surroundings to bring up that wellspring from within you of truth. And then there's the idea of that community being able to project upon you, or you projecting upon that community, actually both, of what that truth really is. So if we're looking for community to reflect back to us what our ego believes to be true, and we're really not looking for any kind of difference, and we're really not allowing any sort of integrity and or diversity or any sort of diverse inclusion into the conversation, we're looking at homogeny. And that is, and I said this in the peace lecture I gave last week. Tim, I believe you were the one who asked that question. How do we get out of echo chambers? Yet again, yet again, another reason why we were supposed to do this episode today and not several weeks ago, because when you asked me that question, it forced me to think. It forced me to think about what it takes to get out of an echo chamber. And what it takes to get out of an echo chamber is this idea that we have to allow for there to be differences in opinion. And in order for us to allow there to be differences of opinion, the response that I gave you was something that I learned from Lisa Schersch's work. Lisa Schersch believes that cognitively, and Tim knows a lot about this from hypnosis, cognitively, there's kind of three different layers of consciousness, right? There's that very there's that system that's very responsive to stimuli. And Jill brought in that word stimuli. There's that kind of instinctual. It's not even instinctual. It's kind of like the automatic stuff, the stuff that keeps your heart beating, the stuff that keeps you breathing without you having to think about it. Then there's the other layer, which is the response that is more instinctual. The idea that when somebody jumps, you are scared. And this is like the responses of fight, flight, fawn, freeze. And then there's this other layer that responds with logic and creativity, right? And if you're not in an environment where you're able to exercise all three of those layers of your cognitive mind at the same time, if you're not encouraged to bring all three of those layers into your thought process on a conscious level, and you're not encouraged to exercise those in ways that will integrate those three layers, you're likely going to be in an environment where you're subjected to being identified as rather than deriving identity from within. This is at the core of problems with tribalism. Identity derived from the group can be a lovely thing. It can be a beautiful thing. When I see myself in a community of fellow people who see me for who I am, and I'm able to see them for who they truly are, and I'm allowed to see differences, and I'm allowed to acknowledge my own differences, as opposed to disallowing difference and rejecting questioning, I am allowed for that wellspring within me to bring forth truth, as opposed to having truth projected upon me. Is this making sense?
It makes sense to me, and I've got it's bumping up against different frameworks and stuff that I think about, but it does make sense.
So I'm allowing Gloria here enter religious trauma. Enter religious trauma. This is my segue. Religious trauma, or even betrayal of any kind, because religious trauma is a form of betrayal. It's a form of self-betrayal, like any betrayal. It's a form of self-betrayal as opposed to group betrayal, right? Any form of betrayal is when and we did an episode on masks and roles last season, as you recall, which was very informative about this. Anytime we are betrayed by our community, there's a self-betrayal that comes before that. There's a denial of authenticity. There is a lack of ability to allow differences. There's a lack of ability to allow questioning, to allow doubt, to allow there to be the integration of the three layers of the mind. And when that betrayal becomes external, becomes physical, becomes very real and into the field of the group, there is rejection. There is the pain and trauma of losing that identity, because the problem with religious trauma is that when we allow ourselves to be defined, when we allow our identities to be defined externally, that can be taken from us. It can be taken from us very easily, very quickly. It can be taken from us overnight. I speak as someone who has been through religious trauma. I speak as someone who has been through it. And I'm here to tell you that mine was not overnight. Mine took years. It started with a parent who was a non-believer who did their best to hide the fact that they didn't believe. It also continued with the fact that I had questions that started from a very early age, and those questions were not responded to with compassion or curiosity by my religion, by my religious figures. It began before I even arrived on the scene by, in this respect, in my religion that I was raised in, but not allowing, like, for an example, among many, not allowing women to be a part. And I'm not saying that's the only thing. Like, I'm just saying, like, for an example, my religion didn't allow women to have any kind of voice whatsoever unless they were singing in the pews. So women weren't allowed to be talking about anything, doing any sort of leadership unless they were teaching Sunday school or singing with a very lovely soprano or alto voice. So the idea that I would have questions was even more unwelcome in that environment than, say, a young man or a little boy that would have had those same questions. Then it continued with the fact that I was actually physically abused by a more senior member of the church. That was not really brought forward in any sort of meaningful way. It was kept very quiet. I won't get into the story of it, but this is a very similar story to just about every religious trauma I've ever talked about. At some layer of bringing this forward, it gets quieted, it gets silenced, because it's that difference, or that showing that that identity that's externally derived is not true. It's silenced to the point where it's gaslighting, where I was told that maybe it didn't even happen, or that I made it happen for myself, or what have you. But all my life, I had derived my identity from my place in that church. I didn't know the difference. That's where the innocence comes in, is that I didn't know the difference. So I'm not saying like that self-betrayal is something that you should condemn yourself for. You don't know any different, really. That's where innocence comes in. But that self-betrayal becomes manifested outwardly, as innocent as it may be. And when you're able to see it, and furthermore, when you're privileged enough to do something about it, or you have the support to be able to do something about it, or get away or break away from that environment, you have that ability to see that your identity was never really what was given to you in the first place. That in and of itself is traumatic. It is being removed from a group that you believe to be a core facet of your identity. And when you're overcoming religious trauma, you then have to rebuild your identity from scratch. And more often than not, the lucky ones, I should say, are able to do so with good support. That's the sort of work that I do. I help people, as you'll see on my website. One of the 4 offerings that I do is reclaiming or redefining spirituality, because there is so much of what I'm talking about in the world where we derive everything that we know about ourselves externally and from external sources. And that has so much to do with the idea of what we see in other people being mirrored back to us. When we see something mirrored back to us that we believe to be true, we believe it to be even truer. But if we're able to remove that as our only arbiter of truth and really treat it as sort of like, if I'm reflected back something that doesn't seem true, to treat that with curiosity and compassion, right? We're able to open up that wellspring from within. If you're lucky to get support from someone like me, an interfaith pastor, or somebody who can offer help in this regard, that person's going to guide you. Or Tim, a hypnosis practitioner, that person's going to be able to help you open that wellspring from within, so you will be able to define who it is that you truly are. If you work with me, I'm going to convince you of your ability to create I'm going to convince you of your ability to foster your own environments with, at first, outside of the environment of a community, like putting yourself in a bit of a vacuum and allowing yourself to see through an audience of one of what you're capable of when no one's watching. And that's just the beginning, because we really need to prove to ourselves. Oh, my cat just said hello. Did y'all hear that? We need that ability to prove to ourselves our own power. And I also published this workbook that I don't really talk about very often because it's a kind of old news, but I was just reminded of it this weekend. I published this workbook called the Devotion Workbook. And it's really the point of that workbook is to convince people that they are deserving and worthy of a devotion to a spiritual practice, because I feel like that kind of necessary, quiet little first step that we all need to take to get into spiritual practice for ourselves and not derived externally is to believe that we're worthy. And in order to believe that we're worthy, we have to come into some sort of agreement that we're lovable, and we have to come to some understanding that we do love ourselves. And yes, so I'm going to go over to the commentary here. We've got some great stuff popping up faster than I can present it here. So Gloria says it stifles critical thinking. Exactly. We have to be able to go back to those questions that were asked at the beginning by Emma, by Jill, and by Jack. And Aaron, Emma, Aaron, and Sarah. We need to be able to ask those questions. We need to be able to express our doubts. We need to be able, if we're not able to do those things, that should be our first red flag, that we're in an environment where we are in a dynamic of tribalism. And also, we may be in that maelstrom of vertigo, where our own thoughts have a life of their own, and we're really just subconsciously operating within those two dynamics. That is where that fits into the topic of our evergreen topic of this being a subconscious level thing. We have to make the subconscious conscious. This is the whole point of our show, honestly. If this is the very last show that we do, something happens and Tim and I aren't able to make any more shows, let this be the final thing we ever say to you. We do intend to come back for a third season. I will say that. But if this is the last show that you watch, I want this to be the episode that you get it, where that is why we're here. We're here to say to you, we have to make the subconscious conscious. Otherwise, as Carl Jung says, you will go through life and you will have obstacles appear for you and you'll trip over them and you'll call it fate. I'm paraphrasing, but that's really what it's about. And tribalism is one of those obstacles. It causes harms to a person's emotional, physical, sexual, spiritual health and safety. That is the risk we take by not making the unconscious conscious. That harm could be further put upon us. There's an innocence there that's taken advantage of. And once we're aware that that's being taken advantage of, that becomes our responsibility to redeem ourselves from further emotional, physical, sexual, and spiritual unsafety, spiritual harm. Easier said than done. Living proof. I'm always going to be redeeming myself from what happened. I'm always going to be questioning my own worth, my own identity. These are things we have to continually practice. That, to me, is the point of a spiritual practice. It is the point of introspection, and it's the point of therapy such as hypnosis. Bear says, if we're lost, which we all are from time to time, it's quite easy to just follow the rules, especially if the rules are made by those we perceive to be more found than we are. People are very good at presenting themselves as this. Very good at it. Following the herd is, Bear continues, safer, more convenient, and often energizing. Even if it's uncomfortable and negative, it's a hard practice to think of ourselves and stand alone, a practice that must be committed to. Could not agree more. And then Gloria says, the root causes of those causing the harm might be repressed childhood trauma and their own attachment and disturbances. Now, what I want to point out about both our dear Gloria and dear Bear today is that they are themselves spiritual in spiritual leadership. Gloria and Bear says, going along with groupthink has us all in the trouble we are in this world. And what we were talking about this morning at Bear's studio and with Lawrence was this idea that to heal ourselves, and referring back to what Gloria was saying, to heal ourselves is to heal the world. It sounds very egoic on its surface to say that. Like, I'm going to go and I'm going to learn to be a spiritual person. And it sounds so freaking selfish. It sounds so egoic on the surface. But if we're doing it correctly, if it is a devotion to our practice, if we aren't positioning ourselves as the arbiters of truth, if we're holding on to what we believe with a very loose, tender, and curious grip, and constantly questioning it, and constantly being allowed to question it, if we are healing our wounds, if we're going back and addressing our trauma, if we are making the unconscious conscious, we are no longer as susceptible. We're still susceptible, but we're no longer as susceptible to become what Gloria describes here, the ones who continue the cycle of harm. There's nothing less egoic than that. So on the surface, it seems sometimes like the spiritual journey that we go on is some like fruity, haha, nutty, whatever, like total fruitcake stuff. And a lot of people make fun of it because it can be that if we're not consciously questioning it. But if we bring in, as Lawrence said, again, that level of humility, which is that loose grip that I was talking about, if we bring in that layer of humility, if we're able to integrate those layers of our mind that don't knee-jerk our egoic levels of identity, like this, you're threatening who I am. Identity is who I am. And if you're questioning what I think, then you're questioning my existence. If we're able to integrate those layers of our mind, then we don't feel like somebody feeling different, thinking differently from us is in a direct attack to our existence. We see it for what it is, which is questioning, which is simply asking the questions that we all need to be asking ourselves. And it's to get back to your question from last week, Tim, which is brilliant. The idea of getting out of an echo chamber. If we're able to exercise those parts of our minds that are responding to questions without feeling like we are threatened, that's when we go into the work of creating peace in the world, because we can engage with others without feeling like our identity is under threat. Does that make sense? Okay. Mm-hmm. I know I've covered like a lot of scattered ground today and I've gone kind of off my notes a bit, but I still want to go back to what I mentioned before. And the 2 chapters, I'll tell you what they are. This book, Negotiating the Non-Negotiable, How to Resolve Your Most Emotionally Charged Conflicts, the chapter on identity and tribalism, and the chapter on vertigo. Very informative here, not specifically to the topic of religious abuse, but very specifically to the idea of like groupthink and the way that our own internal minds work when we aren't sure if our thoughts are our own, and how to question that, like how to go into that line of inquiry. I feel like Daniel does a very good job of that. And I think at this point, I'd like to hand it over to you, Tim, and just kind of maybe open the dialogue a little bit too.
Yeah, I think like kind of transitioning here, I would like to challenge, respectfully challenge one of Bear's comments. She said it's oh gosh, it's safer, more convenient, often energizing. Okay, no, that's not the heart. She said
to follow the rules.
Practice. No, it's about how it's hard to practice to think for ourselves and stand alone. A practice that must be committed to. I agree with that. It's hard to practice to think for ourselves. That's what I want to challenge, because I think, again, central premise of our program here, the more we're able to experience the invisible, experience the interior world, the subconscious, integrate these levels of our consciousness, it becomes a lot easier for us to detect truth for ourselves. When we're able to turn down, it is hard to think about this stuff. Our thinking mind is limited. When we're able to turn down the noise of the thinking mind, get right under it, that wellspring, as you described it, April, that it's a wellspring of truth that's just right within us. I mean, it's our own inner truth, and it's right there. So I don't think it's hard. In fact, I want it to be a lot less hard for everybody on earth to do this, right?
There are challenges. The
There are.
concession between what you're saying and what Bear is saying is that there are indeed challenges. Those challenges have deep risks, because if we go out there seeking help to overcome the betrayals I referred to earlier, we open ourselves up to further betrayal. In fact, those who have experienced religious abuse are like, I don't know how many times more likely, but there's like a percentage more, like a much higher percentage more likely to be susceptible to like cult, being taken advantage of in the form of a cult. Like people who have been abused, brought up in like abusive church environments, are far more likely to become inducted into a cult. So there's this idea that like even seeking help has its perils and seeking risks. So I mean, these things have to be vetted. So that's a
That's
challenge,
right.
for example, right?
That's right.
Like it's beset. I would say that the road to becoming an independent thinker and to finding safe community is beset with challenges and perils. But and in that way, it is hard, but it can be done. It can be
Right.
done, and it should be done. And I'm really reluctant to use the should word, because it's one of those things where I'm putting something upon you. I'm putting an idea on you, you should. But one might consider that one should. Begin that process with caution, right? Like, and yeah, breaking that conditioning, she says, breaking out of that conditioning is tough.
And she's talking about generational conditioning here. She
Oh
says
yeah,
earlier, yeah,
it's
and it is.
that's so true. Like there's so many layers of traditional conditioning, generational conditioning that we have to break through. Not just the layers of our minds, not just the layers of identity, but the layers of
Well,
generations and ancestry
and
as well.
not to mention that if you even do engage in critical thinking about some of this stuff, especially if we're going to talk about religious stuff, like, sometimes like even just this critical thinking or trying to break out of the traditional thinking about it, you're going to burn in hell forever.
Oh
So
yes.
there's threats. There's threats to the very safety of your soul for doing such a thing, right?
And as
So,
Pascal's wager, yeah, intergenerational trauma patterns, exactly, Corey.
yeah.
Yes. With Pascal's wager, it's like the perils are steep. The flames of hell, for instance, and the rewards are infinite. So when you put it that way, the choice becomes obvious to not question what you're told to be true. But this is going to present itself in endless ways. Relationships you want to maintain, achievement in work or school. These, if you don't question what's given to you as truth, you will succeed. You will get good grades. You will make more money. You'll put food on your table and a roof over your head.
And that's a big group think thing you're talking about right there. This whole thing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's societal, right?
Yeah.
That goes down. That is where we have to come in and say that we're all part of this collective delusion. And most of us are part of this collective delusion of capitalism, right? And to question that really puts us into peril of not being able to feed ourselves, not being able to shelter ourselves. So there are Pascal's wager is applicable to our lives on earth. The idea that the perils and the risks are great and the rewards are even greater is a massive temptation to stay the course on whatever truth is given to you. But I am here to tell you, Tim is here to tell you, to be introspective, to question everything. Tim and I have this is a private thing, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of revealing something that's kind of tender and private between the two of us, but I feel like it's important to share. Tim and I have a little symbol that we kind of share between us, and it's basically the infinity symbol with a dot underneath it, as if to have two question marks that have overlapped each other, one in reverse of the other, to form an infinity symbol with a dot underneath to say that we're infinitely questioning. And it's sort of like a shared symbol between us. Like we're always needing to be questioning. I think I need to stop there and
Yeah,
let
no,
you do
this
your
is, I mean,
hypnosis.
oh no, this is great. And I hope if you guys are still with us, I hope that you're getting a lot out of this. I certainly am getting a lot out of what you're sharing here, April. One thing I just kind of looping back to your question really quick, and then we'll begin our hypnotic meditation for today. I heard recently that 90% of our DNA is that of our biome. Only about 10% of our DNA in our body is what we might call human DNA.
Mm.
So what thoughts are our own? What is the self? All of this, I mean, we're intrinsically interconnected to everything that is, like it or not, right?
Mm-hmm. In
We're not
fact,
even
that connection on a spiritual, in the spiritual dialogue of things, it is that connection that is more true than the idea of us being separate. That the idea of us being the idea of us being separated individuals is more egoic and less of the soul. So the more we get into this idea that we're all the same unit, even with our differences, is more close to the truth than the egoic dream of separateness.
Yep, you got it. Just like all the bacteria in our body are very different from us, but they are part of us, and they are
Can't live without
us.
them. Eat your yogurt.
All right. Well, yeah, there is something to be said about healing your biome, rebalancing your biome in terms of even comprehending what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
anyway, if you all would like to join us for the hypnotic meditation for today, please settle into a comfortable position, allowing yourself to relax just for a few minutes here. Hopefully undisturbed. Clearly, don't participate if you're doing anything that's going to require your conscious attention, like driving or anything like that. As you're settling in, I just want to say just a couple of quick words about the nature of this meditation today. We're talking about tribalism. We're talking about groupthink. We're also talking about belonging. And that's really the crux of the hypnotic meditation today. I wanted to focus in on the belonging aspect of all of this. And just consider for a moment, settle in, get comfortable, take off your glasses, uncross your legs, uncross your arms, and consider for a moment that we are much like light, where part of our nature is that of a photon, a fixed point. We're embodied in this body, and part of our nature is like a field, where we are interconnected with everything that is. There is no boundary. This aspect of us that is a field reaches out to the farthest ends of the whole universe, and it's part of the fabric, the field of all that is. So, taking a deep breath, and just let all of this talk roll off as you breathe out slowly. Release any tension in your body. With each breath, you sink deeper into a state of calm and tranquility. Now, if you've closed your eyes, open them briefly. Find a spot on the wall of the ceiling, right above your natural eye gaze. Looking upward, focus in on that spot. Really focus on the spot. Notice all of the little detail. You squint to see even more detail. Taking a deep breath. And as you exhale, look through that spot, all the way through it. And the peripheral vision comes online. You notice the corners of the room. And on your next slow exhalation, close your eyes. Enjoy the feeling of your eyelids gently resting together. Good. Slow down your breathing even further. Get into a slow, comfortable rate of breathing with a really long exhalation. And as you do, relax your jaw. Just drop any tension in your jaw. As your jaw relaxes, your shoulders relax. Good. Slow, comfortable rate of breathing. Now relax the back of your tongue, decoupling this part of your body from the part of your brain always preparing to speak. There's no need to speak. There is no need to think. There's no need to do anything right now except enjoy this feeling of relaxation and focusing on the sound of my voice as I lead you into an even deeper and more comfortable sense of relaxation. Really good. Take your attention now to the feeling of the surface beneath you. The chair, the couch, wherever you are, maybe the floor. Pressing up into your body, gravity gently holding you close to the earth. And as you focus on this sensation, you feel even more and more settled, comfortably relaxed into the earth and supported by life itself. And as you take in your next deep breath, focus on the feeling of gravity supporting you, and it helps you send your awareness down, down into the earth, through all the layers of the earth, all the way down, down to the very center of the earth, grounded, supported. And as that awareness fades, you go even more deeply and even more comfortably relaxed, bringing up now that energy of groundedness and support from the earth into your body. And as you do, you take your awareness up and out, up, up, up to the very center of the universe and out as far as your awareness can take you. An aspect of you can reach to every corner of the universe. Just feel that expanded awareness now as you take your awareness to the very center of the universe, whatever that means to you. This is the realm of the divine, the realm of inspiration. As you take in another deep breath, pull down that energy of inspiration down into your body and let the grounded, stable, nurturing energy of the earth and the divine energy of inspiration commingle in this balance point that's your heart. Good. Now imagine a warm golden light surrounding your body, filling you with an even deeper sense of peace and tranquility, almost weightless. It's very spacious. Focus on this sense of spaciousness now. And as you do, it's almost as if you can't tell where your body ends and the rest of the world begins. Feel this golden light washing away any last bits of tension or stress, leaving you in a state of deep relaxation and stillness. As you slow your rate of breathing even further, even more slowly, you notice just how still your body and your mind can become. And it feels really good to your body to just allow yourself to relax and breathe. And as your body feels even better, your mind relaxes even further. Relax your jaw. Once again, drop your shoulders. And with the magic of your mind, we're going to do something very special to help you feel a sense of belonging in your life. With the magic of your mind, think of a time when you felt like you belong, where you really belong, where you were wanted. People wanted you there. They wanted to hear from you. They wanted to see you. They wanted to interact with you. They wanted to know how you felt. They wanted to know what you thought. Good. How do you feel right now? And where do you feel that feeling in your body? Just focus on that now. Where is it concentrated? Now, with the magic of your mind, imagine a large circle on the ground in front of you. This is your circle of belonging. You might visualize it in a color or a shape that represents that positive state of belonging that you just felt. Go back to that time, a specific time where you felt this, where you had this experience of belonging. What do you notice? Daytime, nighttime, alone, with people? Probably people there. Who's there? Do you hear anything? Good. Now, step into this imaginary circle while feeling this sense of belonging. Where is it concentrated in your body? Stepping into the circle of belonging here. And instantly, someone comes to mind who embodies trust. Someone who you trust. Someone who just embodies trust. Invite them into that circle with you now. There they are, in your circle of belonging with you. Good. Someone else in your life comes to mind who just embodies acceptance. They accept you for who you are, what you are, as you are. They might accept everyone like that. Someone who really embodies acceptance. Whoever comes to mind right now is exactly right. Invite them into your circle of belonging with you now. So there you are, in your circle of belonging, with that person who embodies trust to you, that person who embodies acceptance to you. Now, someone else comes to mind who embodies truth. They're just truthful. They just exude truth. Who is that? Invite them into the circle with us here. So we have the circle of belonging now. This is just a small subset of everything that you belong to, everybody who you belong to. But these three people are very important right now. Trust, acceptance, and truth. And as you notice yourself with these three people in your circle of belonging, you bring your attention back to that feeling in your body of belonging. Where do you feel it in your body? I want you to really feel that feeling now. There you are with these people. They could be very important people to you. They might not be, but what they symbolize is very important. With your dominant hand now, trace your circle of belonging in your mind or with your hand. Just trace that circle of belonging, whatever's comfortable, whatever that looks like for you, just trace that circle. And as you trace this circle of belonging, you think of that person who represents truth. You think of that person who represents acceptance. You think of that person who represents trust. Right there with you, again, you feel that sense of belonging in your body. Tracing that circle with your dominant hand. Good. Now relax your hand. Stop tracing the circle. And in a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 3, and you'll emerge from this hypnotic meditation feeling an even greater sense of belonging with not only everything that is, but the most important principles for you. One, noticing that person who represents trust. Why do they represent trust? Two, noticing again that person who represents awareness or acceptance. You're aware of why they represent acceptance to you now. And focus in on that person who represents truth. Why do they represent truth to you? Feeling that sense of belonging in your body, once again, preparing to emerge from this hypnotic meditation. And three, wiggling your toes, opening your eyes, and right back here with us on Subconscious Sundays. Feeling great. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Yeah,
I bet you
absolutely.
can guess who represented acceptance.
I can't.
For
I was
me?
doing the meditation with you guys, so I was pretty focused in on my own little inner world there. Oh, all right, nice. Well,
Thank
I hope
you.
everybody had a good experience. This is part of what we want to relay in this show is the importance of integrating our levels of being, going within, encountering the subconscious, creating an intimacy with the subconscious. These little tastes, these little hypnotic meditations that we do on the show are just kind of a fun, laid back way for us to encounter the subconscious.
That's right.
Use them.
And as always, this show is a way of bringing our tools into a place where they're freely available to anybody who needs them. It's the free version. It's the unlockable, infinitely unlockable source of what we can bring to you that is always available at any time of day and no charge. If there's a way that we can help you on a deeper level and more concentrated focus, then we want to make that available to you through working with either one of us or both of us. And the way to do that is in the description of every episode that we create here on Subconscious Sundays has two links, one to work with Tim, one to work with me, to work with both of us, either one. You go to either one of us that you feel called to, and we work with you one-on-one on maybe the processes that you're going through with religious trauma or overcoming groupthink or realizing that everything you thought to be true was no longer true and your identity is under attack.
Or belonging.
And your idea, yeah, and your sense of belonging is no longer intact. So if these are things that you're struggling with, these are things that Tim and I are highly trained to assist you to move through this, to derive wisdom from, and to move throughout the rest of your life with knowledge and experience, and possibly even if you're in a profession where you're giving back to the world and you're answering that type of calling, that tends to be the type of people that we work with, actually, that you have this ability to heal those traumas, not just for yourself, but other people, and prevent yourself from furthering those traumas in the people that you work with. So it's really important that you work with someone. And if you feel called to work with one of us on these principles that Tim brought forward, then we are equipped to do that. You pick either of those links, either one, and either. Oh. I said it both ways.
By the way, too,
myself.
I've got some exciting news next week where I'm releasing my new website. So we actually made it public for you guys if you want to come visit me at higherstatehypnosis.com. I am trying to embody what I've learned from April about radical imperfection and just put it out in the world right now. It's not done. It's never going to be done, but come visit it. It's going to be officially released this week. But for you guys, our Subconscious Sundays viewers, I want to also invite you to book a consultation with me on the new website. If you do book a consultation, mention Subconscious Sundays, and if we choose to work together, we'll do a bonus session, a bonus hypnosis session with you as in the course of our work, because I so appreciate everything that you have brought to our community here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tim. That's really generous of you and beautiful gift. And having experienced Tim's hypnosis myself, I can tell you right now, even one of those sessions will allow you to unlock a lot of infinite, personal, deep wisdom within yourself. Tim's not really giving you any kind of truth. He's really just allowing you to bring it from within yourself, which is fantastic.
That's exactly right. Thanks for mentioning that. That's true.
Yeah, and my link will get you to book a session with me, no obligation, no charge initially on Zoom. If you are local to me in West Waterford, South Tipperary, North Cork, Northeast Cork, then I do have 2, possibly even 3 locations to serve you. One in particular in Tallow. Hello. That I really can work with you one-on-one in person, but I do not offer gratis or free sessions on location. But if you want to just kick the tires and see how we might work together, the best way to do that is that free initial call on Zoom. And the link is always in the description of our video. So thank you so much, everybody, for a fantastic season 2. 32 solid episodes that are now available on YouTube for you to peruse and use as you see fit. And we'll be back next spring, late spring, early summer, to bring you season 3 at the culmination of my completing my master's degree. So we'll have a lot to celebrate by then. And as always, we're here for you. In the meantime, we look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, thank you. And we won't be seeing you for a little while. If you guys want to stay in touch with us, please just email me at freedom@higherstatehypnosis.com to get on a very respectful mailing list for Subconscious Sundays, where we will not be emailing you junk, but only things we think will be delightful for you.
Great. And as for me, it's creativity is spirituality at gmail.com. You can just ping me there or DM me if you're connected to me on social media. So we'll see you in 2025.